Hey guys, Corey Correa here. Welcome to Blue Talks, and I hope you enjoy this video.
Thank you. I'm Amy Thurman, an authenticity and holding space expert, and I want to start by offering a trigger warning. My talk involves suicidal thoughts and mental health, so if that affects you, I want you to do what you need to do to take care of yourself today. Before we get to the meat of my talk, I want to share a little bit with you about myself, if that's okay. If you look me up online, you will see a lot of things, a lot of cool things that I have been able to do, a lot of things worth celebrating. Really, really cool things that a lot of people only dream of doing that I have actually lived. And I'm so, so grateful. Things like having my picture made with celebrities, being at an event at the Emmys where I got to give my book to celebrities, writers, producers, and directors who want to turn my story into a full-length movie. I have also had the opportunity to have my face on a Times Square billboard. I have written a book that you will see reviews of, saying that my book actually saved people's lives. You will also see that I'm featured in an article in the San Francisco Examiner about resilience with Mel Robbins. And I'm also featured in an article in the San Francisco Weekly, in an article about resilience with Brene Brown. And like I mentioned, these things are just amazing that I am just so grateful to have been able to live them out. People only dream of these things. But my life hasn't always been that way. And what you won't find, if you look me up online, are some of the challenges that I have faced. The picture that you see at the top left was taken, as I say, on the last day of my old life. That picture was taken on April 25th, 2014. In a matter of hours, my life changed in a way I could not expect. April 26, 2014, I awoke during the middle of the night, 2:30 a.m. I felt sick. I got up to take some medicine, and I ended up passing out, and I landed on my face on the hardwood floor, completely unable to hold myself. I landed flat on my face on the hardwood floor. 6 months later, doctors told me that the impact from that fall had sheared my brainstem, caused a traumatic brain injury, and it broke my neck. So I lived with a broken neck, a sheared brainstem, and a traumatic brain injury for 6 months before I even knew what was happening. I went from one day working at the University of Oklahoma to the very next day I couldn't even take myself to the restroom. I couldn't walk, talk, hear, or see correctly. And I had to wear a cover over my eyes, earplugs in my ears, and I could barely speak above a whisper. It was a miserable, miserable existence, but I would never wish on anyone. My daughter was a senior in high school. My son was a freshman in high school. My youngest son was 4 years old, and I completely lost that entire year of their lives. Talk about years where kids need their mama. That was it. But instead, I was completely incapacitated, laying flat in bed for 23 hours a day for almost a year because I couldn't lift my head off the pillow without excruciating pain, and I literally could do nothing for myself. My family had to do everything for me, and I felt like such a burden to them. So I lost that year of my children's lives. I lost my job, and with it, I lost my sense of self-worth, because that's where I got my sense of self-worth, by how much I could do, right? Can you relate? How much we accomplished, that's where we get our sense of self-worth, and how busy I was. Yet here I was, laying flat in bed for 23 hours a day for almost a year. So I lost my job and my sense of self-worth, and in the process, I almost lost myself. Because I felt like such a burden to my family, and I was in such pain, and it was such a miserable existence, but nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. As a former educator and social worker, I came here to help people. It's my purpose on this earth is to help people. And I couldn't help people being incapacitated in bed. And so I decided, you know what? I have the answer. I know what the answer is. I know what I'm going to do. I am going to put myself and my family out of this misery, and I'm just going to end it all. That's the answer. That's the only way I could see at that moment. and I knew that I had enough pain medication to make it happen. It would be quick, and it would be easy, and it would be painless. And that was exactly what I was looking for in that moment. But before I could get to that point, my heart said to me, what if you don't have to die? What if you can make a different choice? What if you can take the same energy you're using trying so hard to die and you can flip it around and you can use it to fight to live? Maybe you can get better. And if you can get better, maybe you can use your experience to help others. And that stopped me on my tracks because, as I said, as a former educator and social worker, I came here to help people. And my heart knows me so well, knows me so well. So it told me maybe there was another option. Maybe I did have a choice. Because when you're in a deep, dark place like that, you don't see any way out. That's the only way that you can see is to end it all. But my heart said, you know what? You do have a choice. There's another option if you choose to take it. So while it didn't happen overnight, it was a process. I began to fight to live so that I could use my story to help others. And that's what it became. I started fighting my way through the medical and the disability systems to reclaim my life. I had to relearn to walk. I had to relearn to read because my eyes wouldn't track. My brain wasn't working right. My eyes wouldn't track. I couldn't see straight. And so I would fall over, and I was in a wheelchair for 8 months. And I had to, like I said, relearn to walk and relearn to do all of these things. And what I didn't understand was that people were watching me do this. I was fighting for my life, but people were watching me. And they began to say, Amy, you are inspiring. You should share your story with people. You should put this in a book. And I said, I am literally clawing my way out of hell right now. There's no way I want to document this. No, thank you. I appreciate it, but no, thank you. But they kept insisting, you're inspiring people. And when they said, if you write a book, you could help so many people, it reminded me of that promise I made in that bed when I said, I'm going to use my story to help others. And maybe, just maybe, a book might be the way to do it. And so I decided to write that book. And I had never written a book before. I had taught language arts, so I had a concept of it, but I had never actually done it. And so I wrote a book the only way I knew how, and I put it out there into the world. Honestly, I put it out there so that people would stop telling me to write a book. And I put it out there not knowing what would happen. And in 2 days, that book became a bestseller, and it took on a life of its own. And it allowed me all of the opportunities that you saw on that first slide. I got calls for interviews and to fly here and do this TV show and all of these things, come to the Emmys and be on a Times Square billboard. And I just kept saying, yes, yes. I didn't know what was happening. I'm a gal from a small town in Oklahoma. I don't know how to deal with this. I just kept saying, yes, yes, yes. And so I began to this whole new journey in my life. And readers began to tell me that my book was saving people's lives. Can you imagine that? How humbling that was? I just wrote this book. I put my story out there to shut people up. And they were telling me that my book saved people's lives. And in talking to them further, I came to understand that what they loved about the book and what really helped it become a bestseller was that it was written in such a raw and real way. I just put my emotions, I put everything I experienced into that book. And people kept saying, those who didn't know me said, I feel like I know you now after reading your book. And those who do know me said, I could hear your voice. When I was reading that book, I could hear it was like you were telling me the story. And I came to understand that it all boiled down to one word: authenticity. That's what made that book such a hit and such a bestseller. And as an authenticity expert, I hear a lot people saying, just be authentic, just be yourself, embrace your authenticity, just be who you are. But clients come to me and say, I really want to, but I don't know how. I don't know who I am. I want to be authentic, but nobody tells me how to do that. So I need your help. So to help solve this problem, I created a resource called Your Authenticity Score. And it's not a measure of judgment. It is just a piece of awareness to help you see where you are and where you want to be when it comes to authenticity. And it's based on 3 factors. So I want you to think about, as I'm sharing this, which part of you is quietly calling for more attention? The part that wants to be discovered, the part that wants to be valued, or the part of you that wants to live out what you know to be true about yourself. So think about that for just a second. Which of those pieces relates to you the most, resonates with you deeply? And if you score a 1, the scores are 1, 2, or 3. And your authenticity score, if you score a 1, this is the self-discovery piece, and this is just about awareness to know more about who you are at your core. My business is called Polish the Mirror because the mirror of our life gets distorted and it gets covered with layer after layer after layer of things that other people put on the mirror of our lives. Expectations and roles and hats that we wear and masks that we so easily and so bravely wear, yet that clouds the reflection of our mirror. We can't see who we are accurately because our mirror is distorted and covered in all these layers. So polishing the mirror is simply removing all of the things that we are not to get to who we really are underneath it. And that's what the self-discovery piece is. To help make this point, I want to use a story from my life that is actually true. That's very vulnerable, but I want to share it with you. When my book took on a life of its own and I began doing all of these things and just saying yes, yes, and this blur of whatever was happening in my life, when people started referring to me as a celebrity, I said, oh, time out. You have misunderstood the assignment. That's not what we're doing. We put this book out there to help people not to be put on a pedestal. And it really, really shook me because that's not who I wanted to be seen as. I love celebrities. They have such beautiful hearts, and I have met so many of them that are beautiful people. It's not that. I just didn't want to be put on a pedestal like that. And so I didn't know how to handle that when people kept insisting that that's who they referred to me as. And I froze. I didn't know how to handle that. And I froze. And I began falling apart behind the scenes, quietly and alone. Because my book and my story and my reputation was built on being resilient and being strong and pushing through and keep going and don't give up. And that's the message that I had given in my book. And that's the message I was giving on social media. But what would people think if they knew that behind the scenes I was quietly falling apart? I didn't know how to handle it. And I sat in the middle of my bedroom floor and I stared at the wall, frozen, for hours. And hours turned into days. And I didn't know how to make myself do anything. I stopped eating. I stopped bathing. I stopped changing clothes. I stopped taking care of myself. And I simply sat there and stared at the wall. It's very emotional for me. And that leads us to step 2 in the self-discovery, in your authenticity score, which is self-value. And self-value is the acceptance piece. This is where you honor and you value what you discovered in score 1. Score 2 is that you're honoring those things, that you're accepting that that's who you are. That's a piece of who you are. And in the story that I'm using of my life to help make this point, the first step was awareness. I had to become aware of what was happening. I felt this disconnect. These people were telling me that I was resilient, yet I was falling apart behind the scenes. There was a disconnect there, and so I became aware of that. And the self-value piece is the acceptance of that. I had to accept that before I could get the help that I needed. And thank goodness I have a 15-year-old son who lives with me part-time, who needed me to help care for him. And it was my desire to care for him, not my desire to care for myself, but my desire to care for him that allowed me to take the step that I needed to take to get the help that I needed. And while it took great strength and resilience for me to live 10 years with a broken neck and fight my way to reclaim my life, it took just as much strength for me to walk myself into that mental health hospital and ask for professional help. And that was a piece that I had to come to accept. I had to accept that this was happening before I could get the help that I needed. And once I was able to accept it and value and honor who I am, not who people were telling me that I was, but who I am, then I was able to get the help that I needed. And that leads us to number 3. If your score is a 3, this is self-alignment, and this is the authority piece. So think about it. Where in your life are you giving your authority over to other people? We do it all the time. We don't realize that's what we're doing. We have to take our authority back. And I thought about in this piece of self-alignment, I was giving my authority over to my followers and over to my audience because I was afraid. I had shame and fear and doubt. I didn't know how they would respond. I thought maybe it would be the end of my reputation, the end of my career. And so that's why I dealt with it alone and quietly. But I decided and I understood that I was giving my authority over to them. And I decided to take my authority back And I did something so brave that my soul told me to do, and I only did it because my soul told me to do it, and I have come to trust my soul. It knows what's best. And when I got out, when I was released, the mental health hospital kept me for a week. I stayed there for a whole week in the mental health hospital. And it not only changed my life, but it changed me. I live differently, I love differently, and I lead differently now because of that experience. But when I was released, I stepped out into the parking lot and my soul said to me, "You've got to share this. You've got to talk about it. And you've got to talk about it widely and you've got to talk about it broadly." And I was like, "Oh, dang. Are you serious? Come on, soul. We're trying to hide this." But it was like, "Do you trust me or not?" I said, "I trust you." So I took a picture of myself before I got in my car. No makeup, crazy hair, because that's the way it is in a mental health hospital. Everybody's got no makeup and crazy hair in there, right? So, as an authenticity expert, I was being authentic and took this picture of me raw and real and said with the caption, "I just got out of a mental health hospital, not because I was visiting someone, but because I was a patient." And I started this series, hashtag authentically Amy, of posts and videos just simply sharing my story. And I didn't look at the responses for a while because I was scared of what people were going to say. But once I got the courage to see how people were responding to that, I was blown away. Just exact opposite of what I thought would happen happened. People began to surround me and they began to support me and cheer me on. And they began saying, "Me too, me too. I've been in a mental health hospital, but I can't talk about it. Nobody's talking about it. You're talking about it. We need to talk about it." It was just this constant of keep talking about it. You're helping so many people. And then I began to get private messages from men. It's not what you think. And they began saying to me, "You're changing lives by simply talking about this." As men, we are seen as weak if we talk about this, but so many of us have experienced this. And you are helping us. Message after message from men privately. The women were commenting publicly. The men were sending me messages privately because they were ashamed. But they kept saying to me, "Keep talking, keep sharing your story. You're helping so many of us." And so I began to do that. And this piece of taking my authority back, it was hard and it was scary. But living in self-alignment, knowing, going through the self-discovery piece, and then self-value, valuing and honoring what I found when I discovered what was there. And then living in self-alignment, like this is what's true for me, so I'm going to live in that path. Other people may not agree with it and may not see it the same way I do, but I have to live that because that's the path that's meant for me. And so living in self-alignment changed everything for me, changed my life. And today I am here with you speaking at the University of Oxford. And I'm just so grateful. This is not something that I expected, but because I live in self-alignment and I walk the path that's meant for me and that's meant for no one else, opportunities like this come to me and I'm able to spread my message farther and wider. And I'm just so grateful. So what I want to share with you today is I want to encourage you to take this resource, your authenticity score, and I want you to plug different areas of your life into this score, into this resource. Because what I've found is when we are authentic in every area of our life, all of the pieces come together and they teach us how to walk in self-alignment. Because we may be one person at work. We may be a 1 at work. We may be a 3 at home. We may be a 2 at church. We may be a 1 in the world, in the community. But when we can be the same in all areas of our life, I'm telling you, there's so much power in that. That when you can bring it all together and come into self-alignment with yourself and live in your purpose, you just shine. You just shine, and it's so powerful. And I'm just, again, so grateful to be able to offer this to the world. Because I hear so often that people want to be authentic, but they don't know how. So thank you again for this opportunity to share my story and this resource with you, and I hope that you find it helpful. Thank you.